Welcome everyone to the patch 7.3 rundown. I'm going to be going over the patches changes in 7.3 and talking about what they mean and what they're going to do, complete with graphs because everyone loves graphs, and by graphs I mean charts. So we're going to skip through the summaries. The main things that happened this patch, by the way, is they nerfed overpowered champions, and then a couple of weak ones got buffed, but it's primarily nerfs on things that are OP. And front and center is Camille. Camille was definitely too strong. She was banned in almost every single game. You can see, if we look at her stats, this is a website called lolalytics.com. I'll actually zoom in so we can see it a bit easier. She has a pretty high win rate. Her pick rate's very low because she's banned like every game. Her ban rate is like 70%. Camille's overpowered. She is. And so she's getting nerfed. So the nerfs are that her precision protocol, empowered cast bonus damage, is going from double damage to 1.8x damage. It's pretty simple. Overall less damage, which, by the way, will reduce also her true damage output because, of course, true damage is only on the second half of the cast. It's less punishing if you fail to get your second Q off properly, but really it's just a nerf overall. There was a nerf to her tactical sweep slow. So first of all, the high-end slow is 80% from 90%, and it actually decays down to 0% at the end of the duration instead of decaying down to 50% at the end of the duration, which might sound confusing. But here's a chart on what that actually means. We're going to zoom in. Basically, over the duration of the slow, it used to slow you for about 67.5% on average for the entire slow. Now you're slowed for 40% on average through the entire slow, which means that you as a champion, while affected by W, are moving about 185% as fast. Now, this is not exactly accurate. There's diminishing returns based on slows and movement speed in League of Legends, so there's no guarantee of exactly how much you're changing. But this actually, to some degree, almost halves the effectiveness of the slow. You are almost double as fast while slowed by Camille, so that's the effect of that actual change. Hookshot mana cost increased slightly. It's not really a very big deal, I don't find. The stun duration is down, which is a big deal, and she only gets the attack speed if she lands the champion. Now, that is a big deal. Right now, Hookshot is maxed first on Camille, or at least the optimal play style maxes it first, because the attack speed scaling is really nice. There's a chance that that changes since you might not get the attack speed, and you might, since you're not stunning as much and you're not getting as much attack speed sometimes, who knows. What's interesting to note that if you are landing the stun, only this effect changes. And if you aren't landing the stun, only this effect changes. You're never feeling both nerfs at the same time. It's impossible to get both nerfs at the same time. But it will affect all uses of Hookshot outside of running away. And then the Hextech Ultimatum, basically, the change is that if she is killed, it will drop after 1 second instead of remaining for the entire duration. That's just kind of nice, so if the Camille is behind, she has less utility for her team. Okay, great, let's move on. Well, let's talk about Ivern. Ivern was also overpowered. As we close out the Camille tab, we see that Ivern's win rate is a massive 53.86%, and her pick rate actually fairly high. This is not like Kha'Zix's pick rate, but it's still a reasonably high pick rate, and he's been winning a lot for a very long time. Ivern is a very, very powerful jungler. So Ivern deserves to be nerfed. He's actually even been seeing a little bit of play in Pro as well. Not a ton. He's a solid B tier. You see him sometimes, but there's a lot of pro teams that'll pick him first round as a high priority jungler, and I feel like it's only a matter of time before he catches on even more. Ivern is definitely overpowered. So Daisy no longer regens out of combat substantially, and Daisy no longer has as much bonus armor and magic resist. And as far as actually mathing out what that means, it's this. That when Daisy's level 6, level in 16, she used to reduce damage by this much. Now it's for this much. Actually, sorry, this is percent total durability, not damage reduction. It's total durability. This is the wrong title, right? Because 20 armor and MR puts you at 1.2x durability. So her total durability is this, right? She is 95%, 87%, and 86% as durable as before. Not a substantial change, but she is somewhat less durable, somewhat easier to kill. That's a pretty small nerf. Doesn't change all that much. I think there were other changes and they got pulled, so very, very small Daisy nerfs makes her less of a tank, more of a support. Okay, fine. Probably needs more nerfs in my opinion, but at least it does something. Jace. All right, well, To the Skies lost 5 to 30 damage. which seems like kind of a lot when it does 240 and that becomes 210. That seems like a pretty big nerf. And keep in mind, this is when you're level 9, it's only 175 damage. When you're level 11, it's 210 because it's a 6-point skill. More mana cost on the E for the all-ins, and then slightly lower damage on Mercury Hammer. Basically, these all affect when he turns into melee form and all-ins you. He turns into melee form, jumps on you, hits you with the E, hits you with the auto attack. All of these things matter. Since Jace isn't buying Tear of the Goddess anymore, he may start having mana issues if he's going for these all-ins more substantially or more frequently. And he lost, this 30 total damage, and he lost this 0.15 attack damage ratio. If we look over at win rate stats, he is winning quite a lot, 53% in mid lane, 52% in top lane. Very strong. Ban rate has been rising. He's being banned a quarter of the time. Pick rate is pretty reasonable at 14, 15% combined. He's definitely a pretty popular champion. And worth pointing out as well, as we go over to this one, let's do math on his damage output. So this has assumptions based on the items he's got, right? His Q damage at levels 1 through everything as he builds up. You can see he's doing about 9 to 10% as much damage as he was before. And as time goes on, he catches up, which should be unsurprising to everybody. But basically, it's a bigger nerf around level 3 to 6 and everything like that. And then as time goes on, of course, he starts making up for it with his attack damage ratio. Of course, his passive just has a strict attack damage ratio nerf, so of course that will make up for that later on. But, a small-ish nerf to his damage output. His all-ins are going to be slightly weaker. Let's talk about Kha'Zix. Kha'Zix also overpowered. Look at his stats. 52, almost 53% win rate. Picked in a quarter of all games. That's being banned in a quarter of all games, so he's really a very popular jungler. He's winning a lot. He's the number 2 jungler in pro play behind Rengar. This champion is bonkers strong. This champion is very, very strong. So he's getting nerfs. I'm going to sneeze 1 second. He's losing 0.2 bonus attack damage ratio on his Q and his cooldown refresh on his Q because everyone should and does max it first and evolves it first. This becomes a really bonkers jungling ability. It's pretty good in team fights too, but it's really bonkers in jungling. It cools down about as fast as basic attacks do. He's really insane. So let's talk about what that nerf actually means for his stats. And here's Kha'Zix. It is not a big deal for his early jungling. You can see levels 1 through 5, he's losing maybe 5% of his damage at most. It does affect him at level 1. The ratio is so high, just from masteries and maybe runes and whatnot, that you actually miss out a fair bit. Right? You're missing out on 3.3% damage. It's something. It's there. It exists. But it's worth noting that even late game, when you've got a warrior, a black cleaver, a duskblade, and a maw of Mortis, which means your only other items are boots and a guardian angel. Where when you've got 4 damage items, you're only getting like a 9.5% damage nerf. It's not that big. If you're getting Infernal Drakes, that nerf is bigger. Granted, but it's actually not a huge damage nerf. The bigger nerf is really on the refresh, on the Q refresh. All right, let's move on down to from Kha'Zix to LeBlanc. LeBlanc also overpowered. 51.5% win rate. Fairly high pick rate. Huge ban rate. 70% yesterday. 70% ban rate. Oh dear. This champion is much maligned. She is the number 1 mid laner in pro play as well. She is picked or banned basically every single game. She is bonkers strong. So she's getting nerfs. Nerfs to the damage on her passive. It is unchanged late game, but it is lower in the early game. These are a lot of numbers. Let's make it easier to parse through the numbers. Here's the numbers. All right, here's the numbers. Levels 1 through 18, here's the old damage, here's the new damage, here's the damage difference. Minus 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, back to the same. All right, so her big power trough is right around this mid game here, right? She's losing plenty of it early game. Now, to be fair, this is only the damage of the sigil, right? Your spells have to be dealing damage in the first place for the sigil to even trigger, so it's not like her damage is cut by 70%, but the sigil damage is cut by 70%, so it is down somewhat, right? At level 9, her full burst combo does 50 less damage. And it's worth noting that LeBlanc really isn't killing anyone without using the sigil. It is an incredibly important part of her damage output. but it is weaker now. She's losing 10 to 50 damage off her burst in most cases. She's the same champion late game as all. Definitely is a meaningful nerf. That's how much she's losing. Great. Strong champion. Wonderful. A little bit weaker. We'll see if she goes actually out of pro play. She'll still be around. I think she will soften up her ban rate. I think she'll lose a little bit as far as win rate's concerned. Malzahar has a lot of text. Basically, Malzahar is a pretty abusive bot laner. He's very hard to lane against. He's very, very strong. He does lots of good things. He's pretty powerful. One of the important things that Malzahar can do, as we look at his stats, by the way, not insane win rates in mid or support, to be honest, 51 and change. He's objectively stronger than average, but he's got a huge ban rate, up to 53% as it was today. Pick rate is, somewhat high, 13, 14% of games. He's on the high end. He's strong. He's not super bonkers, but he is strong. And he's the number 2 support in pro play right now. So again, it seems to be a well lined up nerf. So let's talk about this. Here's the first change. Voidling spawn time means you cannot reactively block skill shots anymore. You can't block blitz hooks or Taric hooks. Sometimes Taric hooks is really hard. Theoretically, you could do it, but basically, you can't reflectively block blitz hooks because that was kind of insane and not really supposed to be his, intended strength in the first place. So that's kind of gone away. Technically, this does lower his DPS as well. You have a chance of running away from the Voidling if he's attacking you. So there is some value to be gained on the receiving end that you can run away and it'll do less damage as a result. Cooldown between casts is a really big deal, actually, because properly played Malzahar gank is either WWR or WWE. Because his instant cast and had no cooldown, you just wanted to get double the Voidlings out and have them propagate twice as fast and do twice the damage. Now you can't do that. If you want to gank a mid laner by running in, you can only WR, and that's all you get to do. So you're getting half the damage out of Void Swarm in that case. If someone face checks a brush and you're in it and you W exhaust, you have to wait to W again. So this is actually a DPS decrease to his all-in. This is a DPS decrease and a, counterplay decrease. And then here's another big one, of course. Past 600 distance, Voidlings move 10% more slowly for every 100 additional distance farther they are away from Malzahar. So basically, if you sick W and E on somebody and you run away, they will start to be too slow to chase someone down. All of these will have impact, right? None of these are obvious numerical damage changes to his damage output in an ideal scenario for him. But a lot of the abuse cases are down. He will be weaker. The ways he is strong will remain. He wasn't played as a counterpick to Thresh or anything. He will still be able to do Malzahar things, but he is at least a little bit weaker, as he was a bit strong. All right, Rengar gets some nerfs because Rengar is, of course, nuts. His win rate doesn't seem that insane in jungle. It's actually really high in top, but that's a very low pick rate, so that's got sample size issues. But he's a pretty high pick rate, very high ban rate, 58% today. Yeah, that's a lot. Interesting that his pick rate's been going down, mostly because his ban rate's been going up, which is, direct correlation there. Basically, the champion is too strong, and he is the number 1 jungler in pro play. He is the most sought-after jungler in pro play, so he's getting nerfed. No surprise there, of course. So he's getting what I think are very small nerfs. I think Rengar will still be at least an A-tier pro play champion, and I think he's still going to be a highly sought-after general play champion as well. So the Savagery dash distance does 2 things. One, it might actually make it inefficient. No, it won't. It won't make it inefficient to cast when running around the map. You would need to have 600 move speed for that to be equivalent. So Savagery, you can't dash around the map quite as fast. Technically, this does nerf him some small way. It does have an effect. His W Empower no longer gives crowd control immunity. That's a pretty big deal, absolutely. Now when he gets in, he can't as easily get out. It's gonna have a much harder time doing so. This is probably the biggest of the nerfs. And then his ult duration is down 2, 6, 10 seconds. That definitely matters because I know when I was playing Rengar and I had rank 3 ulti, I would just ult in base and just join a team fight. And I would just have the move speed and I would just show up somewhere and someone would die. So this actually does quite a bit. 20 seconds is still a very long duration. I don't think it needs to be 20 seconds, but it's fine. What's interesting is Rengar wasn't that insane in regular, individual solo queue play. 51% is not insane. It's strong, to be fair. It's deserving of nerfs, but not insane. But obviously deserving of nerfs in pro play. And we just going to see a lot of him in pro play, so it wasn't really easy to tell how much of the Thrill the Hunt duration mattered. Just felt like Rengar typically snowballed and life was hard. All right, buffs to Tristana. Tristana, I really like as a champion. Her win rate is very, very low. 47% is very low. I like Triss. She's very fun. I enjoy her a lot. Pick rate is reasonable. Win rate sucks. Somehow... there's the ban rate. 0.2%. 0.02%. No one cares about Triss. No one's picked Triss. She hasn't been winning in a while. She's a weak champion. So Tristana's getting buffed. The duration on rapid fire is increasing by 20%. No, sorry, 40%. From 5 to 7 seconds. And I've got a graph. I've got a chart. All right. It's worth noting that attack speed buffs actually have attack damage ratios. They also have critical strike chance ratios. An attack speed buff basically just gives you a quantifiable, finite number of extra attacks. Old duration, old attacks gained, new attacks gained. This is how many more attacks Tristana is gaining by using rapid fire. And obviously, the amount that it matters increases over time because the duration of an increased duration of a bigger buff is obviously more impactful when the buff is bigger. And so what this means is, in the early game, when you're just taking your standard trade, you're getting a third of an auto attack, right? So when you're all-inning at level 2 or 3 or something and you fight, you're getting like 30 damage, which to be fair, is 30 damage. And getting 30 extra damage off a rank 1 skill is a lot. It's a lot. There's a really good chance, actually, that, especially because of kiting, this helps you get your 4th shot off on your satchel charge and have it explode for more damage. So even though this number looks really small and I'm getting 4/10 of an auto attack, this might give you your 4th satchel charge hit, which is an incredibly important auto attack. That's a really big deal. And in a late game team fight, you're getting 1.5 more autos than you got before. And when you consider in a late game team fight, you've probably got like 70% crit chance and, 250 attack damage. It's getting you like 500 damage before Hurricane, which is a really big deal. So even though this looks really small, like 1.4 autos, like I can get 1.4 autos, like this is a lot of damage. This is a pretty substantial damage gain. So this is actually a pretty big deal. I think it's a pretty big deal. I don't think you level Q. I still don't think you level Q first. But what I do think, this is going to be interesting actually, as we go back to this thing real quick. I am almost certain that in a endgame Tristana build, if you have 2 Zeal items and Berserker's Greaves, and you hit Rapid Fire, I think you overcap on attack speed. I think you go more than 2.5 attacks per second, in which case some of this can go to waste if you have too much attack speed in your build. I would have to do further research to look into it, and if Tristana becomes meta, I will do so. At this time, I'm not going to because it's not important enough to just go into that much depth into this change. But there is a chance that Tristana builds might have to change because so much of your time you will have this buff on you. There's actually a decent chance that Tristana will just go Essence Reaver instead because there's value in getting your cooldown on this much lower and having this up all the time. And in the new patch, I'll experiment with Essence Reaver 3rd on Tristana and seeing what it looks like. Okay, so Tristana gets some buffs and they're substantial. Vi is getting some nerfs. Vi has, well, we'll show you. Vi has a 52% win rate with a very high pick rate of 12%. She wins a lot in solo queue. Her ban rate went down on servers where the patch has already come out. Her win rate may have gone down in servers where the patch came out. This actually might have some stats reflected from the European servers. I'm not certain. That's a chance. Either way, she is very, very strong. 52% win rate is very high. She was a pretty big solo queue champion. So she loses 5 move speed, which I think is totally fair, considering that she already has a bunch of gap closers. She buys a Trinity for us. She's got her Q. She's got her R. She's got a lot of ways of catching up to you anyway. And her base attack speed is down because basically it's shaving off power that Vi doesn't need to function as Vi, right? Vi should be successful, generally speaking, from landing Qs, landing her R, and getting her auto attack resets with her E. This does slow her clear speed by a couple percent. I mean, she's losing 0.02, which is like 3% base attack speed down. It's not a big deal, but she does 3% less auto attack damage clearing the jungle. It means you have to use your E auto attack resets more frequently. And of course, the 5 move speed slows her jungle down, slows her ganks down. She is weaker. Vladimir is weak. He's gotten a lot of changes over time, so he's got several buffs. Well, 3 more base attack damage helps him last hit. I know, landing her R Kappa, I know. 3 AD helps him last hit. Base attack missile speed, this was very, very low. This is still pretty slow, but this still helps him last hit a bit better, so he gets a bit more farm for the non-pros. Even for pros, it'll help him a little bit. But it's just a nice little soft buff. It even helps him push turrets a little bit. Why not? Transfusion gets a bunch of numbers tweaks. Okay, so the ability power ratio is up 0.05. Okay. The damage is up 5 to 25. Okay, these all seem great. My normal Qs are stronger. That's wonderful. Transfusion bonus damage down when I have Crimson Rush on. Okay, well now it's just math. So what's going on here? Well, first of all, Vladimir was weak. Win rate top 45%, win rate mid 46%, low pick rate, no bans, right? Not a popular champion. On the high end, he's gotten some wins, but, not really doing very well. All right, so what's happened here with Vladimir? Well, let's go over. All right, well, the damage went up 5 to 25. The ratio went up 0.05 at all points. And the amp damage, when you empowered the Q, it's 2 less in the early game, then 5, 12, 19, 26. Okay, so very quickly the amp damage is higher. Only level 1 Vladimir gets the nerfed amped Q. The amped ratio is basically identical. It's 0.01 higher, basically means nothing. Technically it's higher, but it's basically nothing. So, okay. So the amp damage slightly down, then obviously higher. Normal damage, obviously higher. This actually lines up pretty cleanly. All right, so my normal Q does 6 to 18% more damage, and the ratio is 9% higher. Okay, so I'm doing, 6 to 18% plus 9% here. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I'm getting, a solid 15%-ish damage amp in the late game. Okay, what about my amp damage? What about when Crimson Rush is on? Well, the ratio we know is basically nothing. It's 1% higher, but it's something. It exists. And then the amp damage ratio, right? When I have Crimson Rush on, the base damage, not counting the ratio. Okay, fine. It's basically the same. It's down 1% to 5. Okay, another 9% damage amp. So in here, unamped, I'm doing about 15% more. And when it is amped, I'm doing about 5% more. So I'm getting a pretty sizable Q damage at all times when playing Vladimir. Theoretically, Crimson Rush Q at level 1 is weaker. No one cares. These are your damage numbers right here. 18, 9, 9, 1. These are your percentage gains. They're pretty nice gains. So these are Vladimir buffs, and you needed the help. Let's talk about Zyra. Zyra is bonkers. Zyra is silly. She's got that super, super high 51% win rate. Her ban rate seems really low. That seems strange. That surprised me that it's really, really this low. Win rate quite high, 51s, 52s. She is the #1 support in pro play. This champion is strong. This champion is strong. So, Q mana cost goes down by 10. Not a big deal. In solo queue, it kind of matters in solo queue because people will spam at you really hard and try to do, mean things to you. The really big change is this. So, way back in the middle of last summer split, when Zyra was the #1 pick ban champion, plants always tried to attack champions if they were in range, and that was insane. So that got changed to only attack if you got hit by the spell, or if the plant spawned within about 300 range, which is pretty short, of a champion. And then she got some attack damage ratio buffs, or attack ability power ratio buffs, and then once again, she's back to being the most sought after support in pro play. So now there's no longer any priority in going after a champion unless you land the spell. If I land the E route, the plant's going to go for you. If I auto attack you, the plant's going to go for you. But if I just summon a Q and there's a caster minion next to it and you're behind the caster minion, you shouldn't be getting hit anymore. This heavily affects her laning phase. This heavily affects her laning phase. It does not change almost anything to her team fighting. And if she plays it right, she can still play around it pretty well. If she lands the Q, those plants are still hitting you, right? If the skill shot lands, she's still going to get stuff. So if they're good Zyras, and good Zyras will summon plants when you're going to last hit, they're not just summoning them at just on respawn, on cooldown. This is a moderate nerf to the champion. It has some level of effect. I think she will still be a top 3 support in pro play. And she'll still be strong in solo queue. Still be about 50%, I'm pretty sure. Seems strong. All right, quickly running down the rest of the patch notes. Practice tool will come throughout 7.3. If you're running on the upgraded client, that's cool. Skin names in the scoreboard, sure, why not? League client updates. Flappy banners. You can right-click for stats and stuff on people in the end of game. And in a news tab, which looks like this, that's pretty cool. I made that. That's pretty sweet. And now if you want to opt into using the League client update, it's a pretty quick fix. Notable fixes: champ select scrolling, really long URLs, highlighting when people send chat. That's kind of nice. Okay, yeah. Making sure people are aware of this. People play enough of both queues. New game mode, haven't played it, looks pretty interesting. Bug fixes: Warwick could move Baron and stuff around with his Q. Quinn sometimes lost her passive, that's a small buff. She's already very strong, but okay. Mikhail sometimes actually cleansed other CC. Oops. Duskblade had a bug where you got the ward killing. There were, I guess, an interaction with Twitch Q against taunts. A bug with Gnar against Camille ulti. Apparently you could block into the drop portal, that's gone. Gangplank theoretically crit turrets, whatever. Kled keeps his W against more targets now, that's good, he doesn't waste them on plants. Challenging Smite, it's a tooltip change, excuse me. Clones are now more stealthy if you are affected by Zeeks. These are particles, these are particles, this is sound stuff, this is, I guess, helpful for people with low resolution, low graphics settings. Krug split in Fog of War, you can apparently track junglers through that, that's gone. Visual, 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 visual. All right, some new skins. These look pretty sweet, not gonna lie. And that's the patch. Thanks very much for tuning into the patch preview. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any comments and concerns and criticism, please let me know. You can tweet me. My Twitter link is under my face. You can leave comments on YouTube. You can leave comments in Twitch chat, whatever you want to do. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.